everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Alder Hour, your favorite way to end your working day. I'm Matt Alder. I host the Recruiting Future podcast, and I also host the Alder Hour, which you're watching right now. This show is part of the Purple Acorn Network. Head over to purpleacornnetwork.com. Make sure you do that after the show, not now. Watch us now. Please watch us now. If you want to learn more, also go to the Purple Acorn LinkedIn page. That is the best place to connect and find out all about all the other shows that are on this fabulous network. This episode is also available as a podcast wherever you listen to your high quality podcasts. So if you're watching live, and that was a deliberate mistake to prove this is live. If you're watching live, we really want you to join in. So, post in the comments, let us know what you think. We've got some really interesting topics coming up today. We've got a great guest. And we really want to include you in the show. So get posting and we will try and read your comments out. So without further ado, let me welcome my amazing two co-hosts and let's get the show started. Hey everyone, how you doing? Rhona, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. What have you been up to the last week?
Just podcasting and writing content.
Nice. Hi Jocelyn, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm good. Are you traveling again, or are you at home, or
No, thank goodness I'm home. Last week I was in San Diego, so I can kind of relax now, which is great, except I have to go through a bazillion emails.
Yeah, I know the feeling. There's currently a massive music festival going on just over the back wall of my garden. So it's been a very noisy few days. But weirdly, we've got hurricane force winds in Scotland today, so they've shut it down for the day. But I think it'll be back tomorrow, but I don't think it's blown away. So, but yes, very, very unseasonal weather here. I thought actually I was going to lose the internet and all my power earlier, but luckily I didn't. So here I am. But if it cuts off, that's why. So what does everyone have for us this week? Rhona, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about unlimited PTO because Reddit is having a meltdown.
Reddit's always having a meltdown, but that's a particularly good topic to have a meltdown about. And Jocelyn, what do you have for us?
I'm here to talk about some employees who were sexually harassed outside of the office and how HR handled that situation.
Okay, cool. Be interesting to hear more about that. So let's just kick off with our first feature segment bit, whatever we call it, which is Points and Pints. Now, if you've not watched the show before, in this particular part of the show, we all bring an interesting drink or not an interesting drink, depending on what's going on, and drink it while we mull over a couple of headlines that we found in the news this week that we think are relevant. So I am drinking my favorite non-alcoholic drink of all time, which is Guinness Zero today, which I think is fantastic. If you've never had it before, highly recommended. Rhona, what do you have with you?
I finally got a hold of these Mingle mocktails. I've always wanted to try this pineapple. Yeah, it's pineapple one. I tried it yesterday. I couldn't wait. So I'm giving it a second chance today, though.
Okay, it doesn't sound promising. And you say finally get hold of. Are these in high demand? Are they difficult to track down? What's the story?
I just live in Oklahoma. It's hard to get stuff here, but no, finally saw them at the store. Yeah.
And Justin, you're at home. So do you have anything because you're at home rather than?
I do actually. I have this Fresca. It's a vodka spritz and it's orange citrus. I've had it before. It's really good. I will have one sip for the sake of the show and then wait until 5 o'clock for the rest.
Absolutely. Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's actually 8 o'clock here. So that's cool. Right, I'm going to open this. I'll try and find the camera. There we go. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a pint glass. I only have a small glass, so that's going to kind of probably ruin the whole effect. But let's see how badly I can pour Guinness. They've got these crazy machines now in British pubs where you can sort of put this can in the machine that'll come up with a perfect pint of Guinness. That's not really, well, it's certainly not a pint of Guinness, but it's not bad. I should probably let it settle or something. I'm going to have some straight away. That's really good. Has anyone else tried Guinness Zero? No? Did you like Guinness? No. Well, anyway, if you like Guinness, even if you don't, I thoroughly recommend Guinness Zero. Right, so let's get into the first article. So here it is. Now, this has absolutely dominated conversation since it dropped on Thursday or Friday. Feels like about a week ago, but I think it might have been Friday. SAP's strategic acquisition of Smart Recruiters, a catalyst for AI-driven HR transformation and enterprise software dominance. Now, we really wanted to talk about this on the show because it's probably the biggest news we've had in the industry for quite some time. So SAP has agreed to acquire Smart Recruiters, subject to the usual, the usual kind of caveats that go with this kind of thing. But I think there's an interesting angle here because I think that a lot of the commentary about this acquisition has been based on perhaps the inadequacies of the talent acquisition system that sits within SuccessFactors, which is obviously part of SAP. So there's a quite logical train of thought that says, well, SAP have bought this because it's a much better system. There's some great clients and it's going to fit in really well. But I think there is something much, much bigger at play here. If you cast your minds back to a few weeks ago, we had a little segue where we were talking about I think it was Salesforce buying acqui-hiring an AI recruiting system, and it was kind of all under the radar. And I think this is part of that picture. I think that these big software companies, these big enterprise software companies, especially the ones with HCMs, they're look at that. They're having agentic wars with each other. They want to get their AI agents and their data across the whole enterprise, and talent acquisition is the perfect entry point to do that. And it's something that most of those systems have kind of neglected. They kind of bought ATS systems about 10 years ago, haven't really paid much attention to it since. But it's this to me is kind of a whole new kind of ball game. And just to sort of pick some quotes out of the article, which I thought were quite interesting. SAP's acquisition of Smart Recruiters differentiates it by prioritizing AI integration at a scale that its competitors are only beginning to match. Unlike legacy systems that treat recruiting as a siloed process, SAP's approach embeds AI into every stage of talent acquisition, from candidate matching to onboarding and through into the rest of the HR system, HR process. So, I think this is fascinating. I think this is absolutely fascinating. I think it's going to kind of open up the market. What do we think? Jocelyn, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, I think it was a really great move on SAP's part. Something that I thought was interesting out of the article as well was just the fact that Smart Recruiters has kind of a more open, agnostic integration approach. And so that ensures really that SAP can target its existing customer base, but also new markets as well. So I think the intention is for Smart Recruiters to remain as a standalone product. And then that way SAP kind of avoids alienating non-SAP HCM users. So I thought that was really neat, but there were definitely some things for these two companies to consider, right, from like a risk perspective. And one of them was really merging two cultures, right, as always with any type of acquisitions. SAP kind of has that more of that like enterprise side to them, where Smart Recruiters is a bit more agile SaaS. So we'll see kind of how those two merge together. And then the other piece is just ensuring seamless technical integration. That's going to really require some pretty careful execution. And then, of course, and they've kind of mentioned this, anyone who's posting about it on LinkedIn, regulatory hurdles. So nothing's flagged, but it could potentially delay the Q4 closing that they're anticipating.
That was the word I was looking for, regulatory. Just lost it in the mists of Guinness Zero. No, I think that they're really good points. Rhona, what do you think?
I mean, I definitely agree. And I was going to touch on the same points as Jocelyn about the whole merging of the cultures, and not just the cultures, but just how they deliver software in general. Because Smart Recruiters, again, following their agile, their SaaS, it's more like you see how over the summer they launched this new thing and stuff like that. Then SAP is more enterprise, more like steps. I'm not saying that how they deliver software is bad or good or anything. It's just so different. So it's going to be interesting to see how these companies work together. But I definitely think it's a great thing. that they're doing, and it's smarter than them trying to build something that they haven't in a area that they haven't been playing in that deeply as smart recruiters. It's just a smarter thing to bring them on.
Yeah, again, I think that's a great point. And it's like, is this the start of, SAP thinking about software and integrations differently, or is this, something that has made great headlines, great for shareholders, but then will just get merged away into the morass of these kind of software tools? I really hope it's the former. I think there's a couple of sort of more points on it. I think that first of all, it's a great testament to the work that smart recruiters have done in the last 12 months to rebrand themselves as this kind of AI recruiting system, and obviously building the AI recruiting system in the first place, but also getting that message into the market in some really innovative ways. And it also makes me think, who's next? If this seems to have gone down very well as an acquisition, I'm sure SAP's competition are looking at the market with interest. So I'm not going to speculate on who might be next. Anyone want to speculate on who might want to be next, or any other closing points on this one?
No, I don't want to speculate because I'll probably be wrong, but I do agree with you that someone's next.
I'm going to ask Madeline later when she comes on. Cool. Okay. So really interesting. As again, this is something that's going to run and run, I'm sure. So on to the next one. Okay, right. So Trump removes official overseeing jobs data after dismal employment report. So I'm sure everyone has seen this. The job numbers were presented, and President Trump decided that he was going to shoot the messenger because there was a political bias angle to all of this. Now, I've seen a kind of a few different reactions. I mean, my kind of personal reaction is like, well, the US economic government data is kind of seen as a bit of a gold standard, particularly from outside of the US. And is it really that politically biased, and is getting rid of the head of it gonna solve that kind of problems, or is it just a case of someone not liking the news they're giving and trying to sort of manipulate the agenda? So it's kind of an interesting one. Jocelyn, what do you think? Do you is this something that would be expected? Is this data contentious in any way, or is it just someone having a bit of a temper tantrum?
Yeah, I mean, not to get too into the weeds with politics, I try and stay as agnostic as I can on that. So not to get too into the weeds, I do think that across the board, every administration thinks that the unemployment numbers that come out are not accurate. None of them have taken it as far as firing somebody over it, but nonetheless, not necessarily accurate. And I think what happened here perhaps was that previously, before Trump was president the second time around, he definitely felt like media was out to get him. And so, I think maybe he's trying to control the narrative on this. I really couldn't possibly understand the thought process behind it without having any data on this myself. But it really makes you wonder, Matt, is this information actually accurate? And if it's not accurate, what does that actually mean for our economy? Because that's what everybody's concerned about, right? Is if he's saying that the numbers are incorrect and we're supposed to have this stable economy, that's just the gold standard. What does that mean for us? So, so I think that that's a big question people should be asking.
Yeah, it's interesting, and kind of reflecting on it, but beyond my initial reaction, which was WTF. If you think back to when unemployment was a very big issue in the UK a couple of decades ago, or a decade ago, there were very high unemployment figures, and it was a massive political issue. The government of the day always changed the way the figures were calculated. So that happened quite a lot in their favor. So there was that kind of manipulation, but it was just a bit more, I don't know, a bit more subtle, or a bit more hidden, or probably a bit more effective, because changing the process is probably better than changing the spokesperson. Rhona, what do you think?
I mean, I definitely agree with you guys, and with everything, it's hard for me. I definitely do take strong political stances, but I try to look at this as if I were just hearing about anyone else getting fired, right? There's always so many parts of it that you don't understand. Was the way that it was done the most um, the best way to do it? Probably not. It was kind of like it opens up to all of these speculations. But what try to think about is like, okay, something was wrong, person was fired. When you fire someone, you're gonna either put someone else to fix it or to make it better. Well, it's all gonna be come down to what is the fix? Is the fix gonna be numbers that this administration is happy with by putting someone from their camp to do the numbers? Or are we just going to go and really get someone who's totally neutral about this and can give numbers that both sides can respect or trust? It's just, I think we'll have to see how
And
that plays
Rhona,
out.
I wonder too how many people would even be willing to take that job in the first place.
Yeah, I know. This is going to be a hard one to fill, but it's an opportunity because like you said, Jocelyn, these numbers are always like there's always someone who isn't trusting them. So should we focus on fixing it? How do we get it to where most people can trust these numbers?
Yeah, I think I guess the other thing I took from it was that these numbers seem to chime with all the other economic indicators that are out there in terms of making sense. And there's a bit about, where does the line get drawn on this in terms of, data and things like that. And yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it seems to be the world that we live in at the moment that, mistrust and misrepresentation and misdirection are very much to the fore. So anyway, well, I'm glad President Trump enjoyed his trip to Scotland. I don't think Scotland necessarily enjoyed having him, but glad to see he's back in America. Anyway, moving swiftly on from this situation, let's go to the Situation Room. So, hey, Jocelyn, tell us what you have for us this week.
Yeah, so I have a situation that was shared on Reddit. And basically, what was happening is there were some women in the workplace that felt like they were being sexually harassed by one of their male coworkers. And the thing is, some of it was happening in the office. It was just the small things like standing uncomfortably close or trying to isolate women for more of a one-to-one interaction, especially if he was their supervisor. But the big takeaway here was that they were at a company party, and he attempted to kiss a female coworker there, and maybe was a little forceful about it, and not in an extreme way or anything, just just in a very inappropriate way. And so these female employees went to HR to express their concern. Some of it was happening out of the office, which still, if it's a work function like that, you can still hold somebody accountable to that. It doesn't have to be in the office. And some stuff was happening in the office. And the problem was, no matter how many times they went to HR acknowledged the complaints, but they didn't take any visible action and they didn't get any follow up. Like, were boundaries set? Were these expectations communicated to him? Nothing had improved. And it had gotten to the point where these women were now thinking about taking legal action against the company. So that's the situation in a nutshell. And I found two things in particular really interesting about the situation. The first is that a lot of people think that if harassment, discrimination, etc., is occurring outside of the office, that the employer can't do anything about it or hold the employee accountable or discipline them. And that's just wrong. That's incorrect. HR should absolutely be performing an investigation and taking the necessary disciplinary steps if that is what's appropriate for that situation. The other thing that I thought was really interesting was just the fact that HR really didn't do anything about it, despite multiple people coming forward and complaining. And we didn't get enough background in this Reddit post as to whether it was because he was a favored supervisor or there's some nepotism. Nothing was really disclosed there. But I just can't express enough the importance of HR taking these investigations, or rather these complaints, very seriously and performing an investigation as quickly as absolutely possible, followed by really good follow-up with those that have made the complaint in a timely fashion. So interesting stuff. It's unfortunate for those women that happened, and I do hope that there was due recourse and a sense of satisfaction at the end of the day from them.
And horribly, this is such a common situation. I just know so many people that something like this has happened to. Why is it? Do you think that do you think HR is generally good at picking up these things? Do you think this is an exception, or is it kind of more? Is it kind of a real sort of a real issue that HR isn't doing enough to deal with these kind of situations?
I would think that this is more of an outlier. HR is usually pretty good. I mean, this is a huge part of their job is employee relations. So HR is pretty good about taking these complaints seriously and moving forward with an investigation. Where we start to see some deterioration in those responsibilities is when the culture, so upper leadership, doesn't take this seriously either. So I have seen a situation in the past personally, working for an organization earlier on in my career, where the CEO just thought it was, liberal stuff, basically, at the end of the day, is kind of how he put it. And so he didn't take it seriously. He didn't want to hear about it. He didn't want to hear about HR, supporting these complaints and these complainers. And so it's unfortunate. There are cultures like that. And if you are an HR professional in that culture, run away as fast as you can, because it's an awful place to be in.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's been a few, excuse me, there's been a few high profile cases in the UK recently around things like TV and film production where, the long running star of a particular show has finally kind of been outed as being, kind of a serial harasser. Hundreds of people come forward over years. Then, HR and the production companies just kind of get sort of, to take into account about it, but so long after the event. So I suppose what advice is there if it's someone who is the favored person in the company or the talent in the company, or there's this sense that they're kind of untouchable. How do we fix that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that there are a couple of things that you can do. The very first thing is policies. So having very clear policies on the fact this your company has a no tolerance around discrimination or harassment, what the process is for a complaint, what the disciplinary measures are, etc. So having that all outlined and transparent with the stamp of approval from your CEO. So I'll get back to if the CEO is the problem in just a second.
Yep.
Let's say that this is your VP of marketing that's causing problems.
Yeah.
And so, part of HR's responsibility, especially when you're in a leadership role, is to foster relationships with your peers and the rest of the leadership team, so that you can properly influence them when the time comes. And it can be influencing them from a change management perspective, or it can be influencing them from a behavioral perspective, whatever it is. But sitting down and having those very candid conversations with them on why this is wrong and what will happen if they don't stop is really critical. If it's the CEO, I think that some of that is very similar, in the sense that you should still have a relationship where you are influencing this individual for the good, and you are able to maybe educate them a bit more on how this impacts somebody at a very personal level, right, when they're being sexually harassed, and why we don't want this to be a part of the culture. And if it comes down to monetizing it, even explaining, hey, when we lose people, this is how much it costs. When people aren't engaged because they're depressed over their work environment, this is how much it's costing you. You just kind of have to speak their language a little bit and understand what their priorities are to get them on board.
No, absolutely. It's it's kind of it's a big topic, and I just wish that sometimes these things were much better handled or just didn't really happen at all. But yes, well, thank you, Jocelyn, for bringing that to us. Let's go over to our guest. Hi, Madeline. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, Matt. I'm doing well. I love this show. I just loved hearing that whole conversation. I had so many thoughts that I would love to talk about, but I know we're going to get into some of that. So thanks for
Well,
having me
absolutely, yeah. No, there's lots of things that we can talk about. Before we do, though, for the very few people who may not have come across you and your work before, could you introduce yourself and just tell everyone what you do?
Sure. So, hi, everyone. My name is Madeline Laurano. I am an analyst. So, I study and do research on the HR technology market.
Fantastic. So, let's start with what we were talking about kind of earlier in the show because it has sort of dominated the news, and I know you posted some really interesting stuff on it. The SAP Smart Recruiters acquisition or proposed acquisition. Tell us your take on it.
So interesting because the announcement was it Friday morning, early in the morning? So probably
Yeah.
8 a.m. for you around that time. But my phone blew up at that time. So phone calls, texts. So it was about 3 a.m. for me. And it was huge news. I mean, there's been rumors about SAP making a major acquisition and talent acquisition for a long time, for a few months now. And we all had our guesses. My guess was something very different than this. But hearing this news, it made complete sense. I think what you said is absolutely true. Smart Recruiters has done a fantastic job of repositioning themselves as a company, but also their product completely, a complete overhaul of the entire organization, the culture, the product into something that is very modern and innovative and obviously agentic focused. And that's, a perfect I think a perfect acquisition for SAP. What I said in my kind of article, my blog and summary is that this was not a product play. It's not filling a gap within SAP's product or portfolio. This is a complete commitment and redirection into something that is intelligent and agentic. And that's, to me, a more exciting acquisition.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you think that affects the rest of what SAP does? Because obviously we were talking about, is this the start of a new way of thinking, or does it just become part of the kind of the enterprise mix that they already have?
Yeah, it's interesting because everyone's thinking this way, right? Everyone's trying to move in this direction of this more intelligent agentic model for every company. Small startups are going in this direction. We're seeing the huge providers, ERP providers moving in this direction too. It's going to be much harder and slower for the larger organizations to do a complete shift. I mean, they've got thousands and thousands of customers on a lot of legacy products still. They have customers using disparate solutions in addition to what they're using from them. So it's definitely a long journey. We're seeing Workday and Oracle even making huge announcements in agentic. The interesting thing with SAP, though, with this announcement is their recruiting product, they're not going to like that I said this, but was lagging, right? I think that would be the commentary compared to some of their peers. They made an amazing hire with bringing Sarah White on. I mean, that is a huge, bold statement to say we're taking this very seriously. She's obviously, a thought leader in the space and well-respected expert. And then following that hire and putting her in an executive position to say, and now we're making a massive acquisition and doing a complete rethink of our TA product.
And how, what happens next? How does the rest of the market respond? I'm sure that, SAP has competitors or similar size organizations who may also be lacking slightly in the talent acquisition space. Do you think this is the start of, the start of more acquisitions? Is it a one-off? What do you think is going to happen?
I think so. I mean, we even saw this. This is different, obviously, but 2012, 2013, when acquisitions started to become contagious, that happened in 2005, 2006 as well. So I think absolutely, we heard in January, this was going to be a big year for acquisitions in HR tech, and that didn't happen because of political and economic situations here in the US at the time. And now we're kind of coming off of that and stabilizing a little bit, and companies are looking at their options. I think two things to answer your question. First, I think there were probably a lot of very disappointed providers that thought they might have been in the mix for this acquisition and this opportunity and did not obviously become that vendor of choice. But then the second piece is I do think there will be other acquisitions. Absolutely. And I don't know if it's going to be a combination of, SAP's competitors saying we need to now compete in a major way, or a lot of the best of breed ATS providers saying we need an out because this is not either what we're going to be able to do or we know it's not sustainable. I think to me, I wrote about this too. And I think this is the biggest takeaway from this whole thing is the ATS market in particular is no longer ERP versus best of breed. Like it's no longer, Workday,
Yeah.
SAP, Oracle versus iSIM, Smart Recruiters, Employee. It's now Workday, SAP, Oracle versus intelligent agentic systems. And there are a lot of those.
Yeah, no, it's kind of fascinating. It's like the next phase, isn't it? Because you had that all those acquisitions 10 years ago or 10 years plus ago. Then you had things like Smart Recruiters emerging as we're different, we're agile, we're taking on these people, and here we are going around again. So it's kind of interesting from that perspective. How do I suppose digging into the kind of the ATS bit a little bit, because even before this, we've seen a kind of a real sort of confusion of categories in the market, haven't we? We used to have ATSs and CRMs and this system and this system. But it kind of seems that everyone's trying to do everything these days. What's your sort of take on how that market is evolving?
It's so interesting. Everyone is trying to do everything. And I think for a few reasons, a lot of these companies have taken a lot of investment and they need their deal size to go up beyond, $300,000. They want to see over $1 million for talent acquisition tech, and that's going to come through an ATS deal. So I think that's part of it. And then I think the natural, if you're looking at where providers are going with philosophies around skills-based or intelligence, it makes sense to be an ATS. It makes complete sense. So we're seeing providers, be able to, kind of join this and say, we never thought we'd be an ATS provider, and now there's an opportunity to do that. Maybe that's looking at an acquisition. Maybe that's because they do see that there's a bigger opportunity.
No, absolutely. It's as I say, fascinating stuff. And just in terms of the market, in terms of adoption, because we kind of sit here, we talk about agentic AI and all these kind of things, which are very much the direction that things are going in. But where are we sitting at the moment? What are the sort of the big AI use cases? What are we seeing in terms of adoption? What's actually happening in the market here and now, as opposed to a year, 6 months time, a year's time, 2 years time?
Yeah, well, I'll look back first at 6 months ago or a year ago, and I felt like everyone was very hesitant around talking about AI. Some providers were afraid to even use AI in their messaging. Other providers were doubling down on it, and buyers didn't really know what to do with it. They didn't know if they were going to have a lot of obstacles internally if they were trying to buy solutions that were talking about AI. They didn't know if they would now have different stakeholders involved in that process. So it felt like everyone was very hesitant to talk about AI a year ago. Feels like that's completely changed this year. And there's, more of a green light. Companies are saying, especially in TA, we can now buy AI. I don't even know if they know what that means, but it's like, now we can buy AI. And it's like, well, what are you buying? So I think we're seeing kind of this green light era of AI right now, but there's so much confusion. Like, what is that? Is that, I think a lot of companies are like, we're buying AI. And it's like, okay, well, does that mean you're buying it for a specific use case? Are you looking at your existing providers and seeing what they're doing in this area? Are you looking at, other kind of platforms to be able to be this kind of layer on top of your ATS? And I think there's a lot of confusion around what that means for companies. You introduce generative AI, you introduce agentic AI, and that's another layer of multiple layers of confusion. Pricing is confusing. You've got a lot of generative AI capabilities and co-pilots that are free within the platform and should be, to me, that's like an upgrade. But then you have agentic AI capabilities and you're introducing something that's completely different, and there's a price for that, as there should be. And that price really hasn't been figured out. So I think it's an exciting time because we're in this green light era, but I think it's also incredibly confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I made a prediction right at the start of the year that this would be the year we stopped talking about AI. And what I meant by that was, and I'm kind of seeing this in conferences already, because I think this time last year, everyone had AI written on their stand with AI. We have AI with extra AI. And I think, it's good that we're getting into that, talking about use cases and outcomes and things like that, because I think saying we've got AI is a bit like saying we've got a website. because it's just so ubiquitous. So it's good to it's good to kind of really get into the detail of it. And as you say, there is so much confusion out there. What else is kind of on your radar at the moment? What else should we be looking at? What other kind of signals are you seeing out in the market in terms of what's interesting?
Yeah, I mean, AI has just been dominating, so it's hard to think about anything other than that right now. But analytics is huge too. I mean, that's a big topic we've been focused on in our research, and I think companies are feeling that as well, certainly related to AI. But you've got all these systems, and companies bought all these systems during the pandemic that they still don't really know what to do with, and there's no way to get the information that you need to provide internally from managing multiple systems. So, this kind of era of all these people analytics providers, and there's true value there to me. There's true ROI there. And that's obviously companies. It used to feel like a luxury for large organizations that may have had a people analytics team. That's no longer the case. Now it's absolutely something that even small organizations can have. There's a lot of providers that play in that area. People Insights is one that we work with that certainly plays in that area too. So it's something that is a big topic and everyone's talking about. I've been focused on the CRM market quite a bit because we're publishing our CRM index in a couple weeks. So that's been a big one for me. And that's been so interesting to watch too. But analytics and AI are part of that too.
Yeah, let's just sort of dive into the people analytics, people insights in a bit more detail. Tell us about what's going on. What is it that what's interesting, what's innovative, what should companies be looking for in that area?
So, I mean, to me, like the number one value and benefit of investing in people analytics is you get immediate answers in a very dynamic way to the questions you're being asked internally. So if you're in HR or even if you're in people analytics and that's your profession, you are probably getting more questions internally from executives or, from C-level executives that want immediate answers. And that can be very difficult to find those answers when you're managing multiple systems and trying to figure out where this data is or if that data even makes sense. I did some work with a pharmaceutical company here in Boston and, on some of the dashboards for their TA systems, the number of hires being reported on these dashboards were not correct. That's because they had multiple systems trying to integrate and they just didn't do it. So to be able to have a people analytics provider that manages all the data from all your systems and gives you those immediate answers, to me, that's like the number one benefit. I think what's interesting, and I mentioned this a little bit, is it used to feel like it was just a luxury for large companies or for companies that had a specific people analytics team. Those individuals that work in people analytics are amazing, right? They're masterminds, they're super intelligent. They don't really feel like they're part of HR, and sometimes they're not part of HR at all, but it's a different buyer and it's a different user. Now we're seeing a lot of the people analytics providers really kind of going after HR and saying, you don't need to have a PhD, you don't need to necessarily be part of a different kind of society than HR. You can benefit from this as well.
And again, that AI is driving that forward, isn't it? It's kind of making it so much easier. Sarah White's actually listening. She's left us a comment. It hasn't come up. It hasn't come up on the screen. But hi, Sarah. Glad you.
Resting. I'm sure
we
she's
are.
had crazy busy several.
Thank you for tuning in. Okay, so I kind of ask this question. I shouldn't really ask you this question because you're an analyst. You're looking at what's going on. You look at the data. But where do you think we're going? What do you think the future is going to look like? If you were going to make a kind of prediction about where we might be in 2 years' time, what scenario would you pick?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny, Matt. Do you remember when we were together in Scottsdale? Like, was this 3 years ago? Probably.
Yeah.
It's probably a little over 3 years ago, and we were talking about the metaverse. Like, this was our future of where things were going.
Right,
and we were wrong. But it's hard to know.
Or just early.
Maybe we should go back to that. Maybe that is the future.
On my slide somewhere of things that might happen in the future. But yeah. Anyway, carry on.
Me too. But so it's really hard to know. I mean, we didn't predict that this whole agentic AI phenomenon would just like blow up all of HR tech, and it has certainly. So I expect we're going to see even more of this, and I think all providers are going to have to pivot in some way to this model because companies are evaluating their workforce in the same way. They're saying, okay, do we need people? Do we need technology? Do we need AI? What does this future look like? And I think when you look at a lot of companies that have already made announcements to say our HR team is no longer just responsible for people, it's also responsible for digital tech, that signals, I think, where HR is going, and providers are going to have to meet that need as well in a major way. And strategic workforce planning is not the most exciting topic to a lot of people. It feels like maybe it's been talked about for a long time, and we've not seen a ton of change. But there is no way we're going to be able to look at what the future of work looks like and the future of our workforce looks like with AI, with the agents, with all the data that we have, without strategic workforce planning being a huge part of that.
No, I agree. I think it's it's just a fascinating time at the moment. I think that HR and technology thing, I mean, there's a couple of sort of well publicized cases. I've spoken to a couple of people who are going down that route as well. I would never have predicted that 10 years ago, but it's just kind of shows you, doesn't it? And finally, what have you got coming up? What are you publishing next? Where can people see you speak next? What's what's happening for you for the rest of the year?
I'll be in Chicago for an HR summit in August. So that's my next trip. And then I'll be at HR Tech, obviously. And I'm super excited for that, 6 weeks. And then we're publishing a lot of research. I just finished a report on employee communication in the healthcare industry. It's like one of my favorite reports that I've done so far. So I'm very excited about that. And then the CRM index. I mean, it's a huge undertaking. This is a huge report. It profiles 14 providers. It's very in-depth. And we have associate team of analysts that have been working really, really hard on this report, and it publishes in a few weeks. So feels good to publish that. It also feels horrible because I'm sure I'll get many things wrong and there'll be lots of different changes by then. But
well, good luck. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much for talking to me. And let's move on to trending or ending.
So, Reddit's having a total meltdown about unlimited PTO again. Someone asked if it's a real benefit or a scam, and honestly, it depends. Here's the thing. I've worked at companies with traditional PTO that didn't pay out when you left anyway. So this whole companies use unlimited PTO to avoid payouts argument, it's not always true. I actually worked at a company with unlimited PTO, and they actually called it flexible PTO, and it was perfect. And the reason was they did it right. They had a minimum recommended amount, like, hey, you should take at least 2 weeks. They actively encouraged time off. And the key was really communication. If you gave proper heads up, you coordinated coverage when needed. But I do have to acknowledge that although HR had policies, managers were really the ones that set the tone on this. And this is really the case for all types of PTO. But where it went wrong, like this is where it goes wrong, and what I see most people complaining about on Reddit and LinkedIn is that most companies throw out the unlimited PTO like it's some magical benefit. Then they create a culture where no one actually takes it. People end up taking less time off because there's no use it or lose it pressure. Instead, there's this weird guilt. Is 2 weeks too much? Will I look lazy? And like Reddit nailed one thing. Without clear expectations, unlimited PTO becomes a mind game. Employees don't know what's acceptable, managers approve based on favorites, and suddenly the unlimited benefit feels like a trap. So look, unlimited PTO isn't inherently good or bad, it's a tool. And like any tool, it's about how you use it. Clear minimums, cultural encouragement, transparent communication. That's when it works. I think it's trending. Matt, what do you think? Is unlimited PTO trending or ending?
There I am. I was like, finishing my Guinness. Do I think it's trending or ending? Do you know what? I'm going to say ending. I'm going to be
Really?
this week. I think the reason why is and this is a personal opinion, but I don't know of very many examples where it's worked very well. Also, I suppose for me, I think, as you say, company culture is vital here because I think that with the best will in the world, the people don't take the time off. They actually take less time off than they would if they just had kind of normal PTO, normal holiday. And obviously a lot of that's down to the management and the culture and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's also a bit about the overall culture of the geography that you're working in. So I'm here talking to you from Europe, where most of Europe is on holiday for the whole of August. And that's just kind of the way that kind of culture works. So, unlimited PTO is just, I don't think it kind of works properly in the kind of culture that I live in, if that makes sense, because, for that kind of reason. And I think in the US, there always seems to be a reluctance to take any time off for anything ever. And I just can't see how that works from a unlimited, a kind of unlimited factor, because I think that you kind of dig into Reddit about this, and it's people taking days off and then getting fired and then not being available and all that kind of stuff. So I think that in theory, and probably in a few companies and cases, it could work really well, but I just don't think, I don't know. Is there another way of positioning it or talking about it that might work better?
I think what we really need to focus on is that work as we know it is changing, especially here in the US, with Gen Z coming in and younger generations coming into the workforce. Like this guilt that people have, this guilt trip that they put you on. And again, I came from Panama, from a country where you have like mandated by the government 30 days of vacation plus like 14 holidays. And it's like very similar to Europe culture about like you take time off. It's not work, 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 different than here. When I came here and it like you feel that pressure. It's like, oh, I have to stay here till after. I have to work. I have to be available on my PTO. Things that are not normal in other places. Newer generations are bringing it and it's becoming like normal. So that's why I think it's trending, because these people are changing how the culture at work. That's just my opinion.
No, I think that's a good point. And I think that, what I love about the new generation coming into the workforce and the generation that's about to come into the workforce, who we've said many times are even more radical.
Yes.
It is not. It's just that sense of just changing things that don't work and challenging those assumptions and things like that. From that perspective, I get it. And I've been running my own business now for 15 years, so I've effectively had unlimited PTO for that whole for that whole time. And I think that the flexibility around it is is good. But I just think that I just think sometimes companies can just have very strange, ideas about people being off and all that sort of stuff. I think I said this, I've even said this last week, but I worked for a company once where you couldn't take the first or the second, the first week of the month or the last week of the month off, which was kind of really limited. And then you couldn't be at the same time as your teammates. So it was a very kind of restrictive from that perspective. So do you think unlimited is the right term for it? Do you think we should call it something else?
I mean, I think for legal reasons, because in some states you do have to have payouts and stuff like that. People have moved away from the unlimited and called it flexible, and they have like mandated minimums like written, and that's what they pay out in case that something happens.
Right.
I think that's what people are moving away from. I also think just unlimited is a word that is very open to interpretation, and how a top performer would interpret unlimited versus someone who's not doing that good and not that engaged or interested in being at work is going to be different. So flexible is probably the better word.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just maybe it's a rebranding thing. I think perhaps it needs a bit of rebranding, because I do tend to think of it in a very negative way, not because people are taking too much time off, but because people aren't taking enough time off. And I think that, just everything we know about how the brain works and burnout and all this kind of stuff, it's just really important that people have those effective breaks from their job, and then they perform better. And and I just think as long as we've got that culture, that presenteeism, that control, that kind of thing going on, then it's kind of difficult. But as I think we've said many times, let's hope that's changing.
Yeah, and one thing HR people are really, really good at is rebranding. So watch this space. I wonder what it's going to be called, but I do know we're moving towards this.
Okay, cool. So I will concede and go with trending, provided we call it something different.
Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rhona, for bringing that one up. And unbelievably, we're at the end of the show. What do I need to tell you? I need to tell you that you need to listen to all the other and watch all the other Purple Acorn shows that are there. So the HR Morning Show, From the Desk, My First Job, From X to Z, many more. They've added so many shows in the last couple of weeks. Head over to the Purple Acorn LinkedIn page and follow that if you want the latest information, or go to the website purpleacornnetwork.com. You can find us as a podcast on Spotify, on Apple, and anywhere else that you find your podcasts. And you can also find Recruiting Future there as well if you want to listen to some of my longer form interviews. Now, the Alder Hour is going on a break. We are having a summer holiday. Not an unlimited one, but we're having a summer holiday. We're being very European and having some time off in August. So we will be back on Monday, the 25th of August. So put that in your diaries. I am already looking forward to it. Whatever you're doing this August, have a great one. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. This is Matt Alder, clocking out.